Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. Dogboat53, and welcome back to Hearts of Mine 4, the new one of the last days of Europe, as State of Guangdong. In the last video, we tried to dig in to see if there was anything going on between the RC and the rioters, and we couldn't figure out anything definitive, so we're just kind of trying to focus more at the matters at hand instead of just getting our tinfoil hats put on. Matsushita scarcely knows the passage of the original scheduled date for the annual economic checkup of the Japanese Consulate General. Its original embellished entry on its calendar completely obscured beyond the scribbled chaos of resolving the ongoing riots. The Japanese Consulate General hadn't called to ask about the meeting or schedule an alternate date either. They, just like Matsushita, had more urgent, dangerous matters to attend to. The earnings report, fiscal projections, or growth forecasts had been prepared for the meeting set unused in corner on the chief executive's office, gathering dust. If the riots ever reached the government complex, they would all burn together. Well, we know what to build to, hypothetically. Take a mile. Let's go ahead and try to break the deadlock. New situations developed within the doors of the Legislative Council. It now appears that our appeasement towards rioters may cause some worry within the Legislative Council of the possibility of the government losing control. This results in deadlock between these two responsibilities, keeping the rioters peace and happy, as well as calming the members of the Legislative Council from fear of our weakening influence. Matsushita is now at a crossroads, one that he cannot back down from. The choice is simple, yet daunting. Either he forces a compromise between the rioters to submit the Legislative Council or continue this precarious position of balancing corporate and popular interests. One wrong move and the whole system may come tumbling down. No pressure. No pressure at all. At the very least, we have brighter light bulbs. That's one positive we can point to. Also, it looks like a heart and Japan are negotiating, which is going to be interesting to see how that turns out. Now, nothing funny's happened over here yet, would seem. Are they even at war? Mm-hmm. Is this what they do to get the, Is that what they get to be able to conquer Kazakhstan? They conquer it to test their nuclear program? Oh no. I don't remember that part of Tabby. I try not to remember my Tabby at Let's Play, I'll be honest. It's not working! Damn it all! Those ingrates aren't giving up. Even after all I've done for them, they won't leave the streets and let us get back to business. He paused for a moment and drew a deep breath to calm himself before exhaling. There's reason I've summoned you both. Morita, Ibuka, we need a strategy, and we need it now. If you have any bright ideas, share them. I suggest that you take a more direct approach. Matsushita's brow furrowed in confusion. Morita hurried to continue. Well, I agree that they could stand to be more grateful. He chose the words carefully, so he could play dumb, but Matsushita chose to take offense. I've always found that men are easier to trust face to face. Your efforts to turn their trust through reform are admirable, but I must recommend meeting for leaders directly. Rathlin thought, though Matsushita was to admit, Morita did have a point. Ibuka? He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'd say the police agree with me on this. Buka's biting comment, made with a bored expression, earned him a amused smile from Marita and slight approving nods from the police guarding the meeting. Continue your current reforms. To pull down those can be reasoned away with. Continue harsher crack down on those rioters and anarchists who remain. This issue made sense to Matsushita on a very basic level, divide and conquer. Both men looked expectantly at Matsushita. They'd have their answer soon. Well, it's time to save. We're at a breaking point, I think. We'll walk a fine line. There are easy ways out, solutions provided from courtiers seeking honors in return, but Matsushita will walk his own path, come hell or high water. There's no better option. On one side we have the people of Guangdong aching for reform and improvement for their lives and working conditions, and on the other legislative council in their interests of making Guangdong the shining pearl it deserves to be, without a care for the well-being of others. We appease one faction, the other require on defiance, and terrible consequences may befall upon our precious state. For the sake of everyone involved, the government and Matsushita will walk a fine line between the two, like towing through a tightrope. It's to our knowledge that this will be a very challenging and thankless task, one that Matsushita must carry out, nevertheless, for the sake of stability and peace. No wrong step must be taken, or everything may come tumbling down. We're getting to the point where we could, we're almost where we could dismantle these guys. I think we'll do that. And then ooh, there we go. Taking Mumai back. Oh. Treaty port's been returned. That's nice. Anything about Hawaii, though? It doesn't look like it. Let's take an ear to the streets. Since the beginning of this affair, the people on the streets kept on shouting demand and request of improving working conditions and other things, which, if we follow through, will cause our profitability to tank, and so far our efforts to contain them haven't been concerned anything about what they have been asking. The continued active rioting is our gravest threat to the stability yet, and so to carry out the task of pacifying the streets, perhaps it is time that we change that. This time we'll take notes of what they ask for in their daily riots, and for once, perhaps listen to their shouts and screams. They may fall right into our hands if we play our cards right. Perhaps we may fulfill some of their demands and wishes, within reason, of course, in order to temporarily pacify the situation before a more permanent solution can be found. We do have to tread carefully, so as not to anger the Legislative Council, and once again, walk the fine line between the two. I'm not too nervous about all the War Crisis forces auto-economize, doesn't it? The CCL man sighed, rubbed the Bridges' nose. No, I've told you, we won 100 times now. We're not working a dangerous job for longer hours for less pay. If you agree to our terms, Oh, come on! Blurting this out made him seem petulant, childish, but he was trying anything at this point. You know I can't give you that much, please, just cut me a break. When we put this mess behind us, I know that business will pick up, and then we can look into what you want. No. I think we've heard enough. A CCL man stood up, didn't bother shaking Yamauchi's hand. Good luck, he muttered as he and all 12 of Yamauchi's drivers walked out with him. Nintendo CEO fell in his chair and let out a small primal groan that increased in volume and gutturality when the last driver closed the door behind her. It was going surprisingly well at the beginning. The riots didn't stop people from needing to move around the city. If anything, people were taking taxis where they would normally walk to avoid getting caught in a crowd. Adding sturdier glass to the cars and giving personal defense solutions to the drivers, so it cost a bit more, made Nintendo's taxis desirable for the safety-conscious commuter. Traveling bulletproof shell with a protective driver who could resist the offer in these dangerous times. But the CCL showed up, demanding higher wages and shorter hours Yamauchi simply couldn't provide. Besides, there was nothing to be done now. Yamauchi had a taxi business with no drivers or dispatchers. He had depots, cars, and maps of Hong Kong streets, assets with nobody to utilize them. From his files, he received a plan to this endeavor and pulled out the 3-page document he'd assembled on his competitors. Yamauchi figured that one of them would be interested. Note to self, check if vehicles are in resaleable condition. Near to the street. Next, let's turn our ears to the whispers from the home islands. Guangdong is nothing without our benefactors in Tokyo backing us up. They are the ones that first made us profitable and rich. Without the guidance of Tokyo, our streets may already fall into anarchy, and Guangdong will fall shortly after. In accordance with this, every action we take must have the interests of our benefactors in Tokyo in mind. The Japanese government, at this very moment, is already expecting us to bring order to the streets without delay. If we are to fail in bringing the solution under control rapidly, they may not hesitate to intervene more directly, which we do not want to happen. With the situation showing no sign of calming down the moment, this rumor may come true if we're not careful. Thus, it is in our best interest that we act fast to defuse the situation before it gets worse and before Tokyo intervenes. Matsushita let the phone ring 3 times before finally picking up. He knew what it was. What is it, Morita? I don't want my advice, but you may need to listen. My contacts in the Eugene have told me that the mood in the community is getting more and more heated. They think you're an out-of-touch elitist who doesn't care for them at all. And I mean, they're saying it even more than before. Matsushita grimaced, but he let that jab go. If you don't do something, pass some sort of reform to show that you care about the situation, these riots are going to get a lot worse. And what would you suggest? Open things up. Relax some restrictions on government positions and allow for more local businesses to compete with conglomerates. Nothing too radical, just enough to keep them from further radicalizing. Matsushita's jaw tightened. If he did that, it would be upsetting the very status quo he had come to office promising to protect. But maybe the only way to salvage this situation is save Guangdong and himself from complete ruin. Thank you all. Take it into consideration. Alright, 30%. Not much strength either. Budget's still frozen, so we still kind of have our hands tied behind our back. But the strength is lowering slowly but surely. Soon we'll be able to dismantle the Federation of Tradesmen. Well, the stain is finally gone. That stain... let's hope the stain isn't blood. Well, it's probably going to be blood soon. Try some Yakuza-like find new roles to play in the Guangdong riots. We could dismantle them right now. Sees the government despair a little bit. Let's try dismantling these guys. Smuggle bastard, ain't he? Remarked one of the many huddled detectives around the briefing room of CTR monitors. They're trembling statically, the flickering visage of the same man. On the news feed and surveillance footage, a protest leader stood, flanked by scores of his comrades. I'd be smug too if I got to spew this all day without being kicked swiftly downtown. Judging by his little stand-up on it, KHK, that's exactly what my college boy over here thinks. Non-violent, civil disobedience, my ass. But we know the better. Do we, sir? We still got nothing that'll stick. No traces of movements, just associates and dubious links. So probe the fucking associates then, smartass. Do you think I called you all in for a pep talk? The man keeps his movements guarded well, but he's got a big enough entourage. We have a list of their names right here. One of them bound to squeal. Turn to the man who interrupted him. The breakers, and for the sake of your badge, they better. Section Chief Sudo had sent the rest of the floor home for the day. To their general relief, the amount of work for the business planning divisions had stayed the same, even as Guangdong tore itself to pieces daily, and nobody would leave until Sudo set the example. They'd all scattered into the streets before sundown, leaving Sudo with a mountain of paperwork to finish and phone call to make. He took a longer drag on a cigarette than usual, turning the process on its phone in slow, deliberate fashion, drawing out the process for as long as he could until he heard the electronic click that opened its connection to Tokyo. Division Chief Tsukamoto, not gonna make the production targets again. Sudo said, hoping a clear cut would hurt him least. I'm sorry. The ensuing storm of recriminations and the insults were so loud that Sudo could hear them even if he put the phone receiver at arm's length away. Yes, the delays are bad. As bad as the report. Machines break every 2 hours and repairmen take another 3 to arrive. We can't just get new people. Half the city's on strike or rioting. More shouting, accusations. Suda was ignoring the obvious that he was underperforming and that normalcy would have to be restored. Suda didn't hear much of what Tsukamoto said after that before realizing he was screaming all over him. Of course it's not normal. Nothing about Guangdong is normal. You don't understand that we spent even a minute in this place. Not that you ever will. Leading from the back. "33 years old, lower management position within a medium-sized corporation, single member of a GFT. Seditionists Creighton. Tell me, did I get anything here wrong? I already gave the information I'm legally required to. I refuse to make any further comments without the presence of an attorney. I know my rights." A soft chuckle came from the other side of the table. "Rights? No, sir. You know what used to be your privileges. They don't exist anymore. Now, what my colleague is trying to say, sir, is that you're best informed to cooperate with us. You're known confident. I'm the most dangerous man in Guangdong. And by this, I do not mean dangerous to the police. When these fires die down, those close to him will be spending a very long time in a very cold cell. Or maybe a very short time, followed by a seat in a very hot chair." "Precisely. Well, I'm sure my colleague would love that. I see the possibility of a second chance for you. The choice is simple. It is within our power to ensure that you are protected, perhaps even rewarded. I would like that. I really would. But I haven't seen anything from you that would let me do that." "My friend would love to throw the book at you. So do it then. Book me. Get me my lawyer. Fuck off." Choice is simple. Well. Book him. We might get something. Only for notables. Do things after nighttime. cooperation will be rewarded. However, if you choose not to, you will not see the outside of a jail cell for a very long time. He searched for reaction, any compliance, any sign of submission. He found none. The speckled office worker stared at the chief, defiance was evident in his face. A mirthless laugh filled the concrete room. Truly, this cannot be the best of a GPF has to offer. If you don't mind what I've already taken by joining a supposed subversive organization, do your worst, thug, I'll give up nothing. The chief reclined in his chair, glancing over at his companion. His fingers tapped on the table, hopes to breakthrough dashed. Let him stew. We'll find another path. Talking with General Nagano was never pleasant even in the best of circumstances, and these were far from the best of circumstances. The head of Japan's IJ garrison never came with good news. The first words he said after bursting and announced Matsushita's private office were, "They're not happy." Matsushita looked up from his paperwork, sighing, and asked, "Who's not happy?" "Tokyo. They think you've left the situation out of hand." "Really? What do they plan to do about that?" "Nothing. For now." The silence filled the room. They both know what Nagano meant. It had been no secret for a long time they did not believe that a bunch of weak-willed corporate bureaucrats were fit to govern. That these riots had only given them even more proof that a firmer military end was needed. Matsushita composed himself. "Well, if that's the case, and I'd appreciate if you let me get back to my work. Please reassure Tokyo that the situation here is temporary and already dealt with." "Of course. I just figured you would want to know. And we'll make sure you handle this promptly." He didn't need to add the implied, "or I will." As he left, Matsushita sat, stewing. All he could do was hope that his efforts would bear fruit and that his crisis would resolve quickly, or everything he'd built would come tumbling down. Legislative Council, even at times like these, is still filled with tasks and talk and bickering about profit margins and economic statistics, accompanied with a new feeling of crippling uncertainty. Unsurprising enough, these concerns are also those that fill Matsushita's mind. Perhaps it's time for Matsushita to deal with the Legislative Council. After all, the point of towing the middle line is to appease both parties in negotiation, making sure that both of them are pleased in order to contain the situation. To show the Legislative Council that we were willing to quell the riots if necessary, we'll start to somewhat clamp down into these riots. Sustaining tough action against them will earn the support of the Legislative Council, but we must be careful not to anger the rioters too much, lest our efforts fail and the situation descends into anarchy. Psychological pressure is best exerted in small, uneven doses. The mind can laugh away a cheap threat and remain defiant in the face of momentary pain. The lieutenant is no different. But against a prolonged state of limbo, a situation where one's fate lies entirely in the hands of others, the human mind's vulnerabilities are inevitably exposed. Do you have to do? Please ask the same questions. Less in hope of obtaining answers, and more to reinforce the inevitability of interrogation, to turn defiance into doubt, and then despair. There's a pressing need for answers, but nothing so desperate that the police need one now. The riots, as destructive and disruptive as they were, will be there tomorrow and the day after. If that's what it takes to get at the intelligence and the captured GFT lieutenant said, then so be it. As Riders are brought into detention, in full view of the lieutenant's cell, his expression morphs away from cocksure confidence into feigned indifference. His expression tells us less from his tapping feet and darting gaze. The man will crack soon. All that matters is how to collect the information we have wanted and how to verify it. Lures the man to the other prisoners. His relief will be his undoing. Maybe it will be. No luck there. Could do some Wari bases. Feels appropriate to build prisons, though. So I'm building prisons. Look of a vague disbelief, the lieutenant was released among his comrades. Lieutenant General quickly turned to barely concealed smugness. Do you think the police had overlooked him as a threat, worth no more to the police than any other common protesters, swept up for being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Pride comes before the fall, and in this instance, that fall came swiftly indeed. Just because he was freed from solitary confinement under guards did not mean he was no longer on observation. Through microphones embedded throughout the detention cell, the police could hear every whisper of congratulation the lieutenant received for having endured interrogation, not knowing the real interrogation had just begun. A Criminal conspiracy, after all, requires conspirators, and having released among his own kind, Lieutenant soon slipped far more than he had ever disclosed to his captors. Now all that remained was to play back the tapes and verify their accuracy to see if there's any commonalities in names or locations that could be of some use to the men on the streets. Doing our work for us. Don't worry, Mac. We'll manage to take care of your business while we're here. What business? You know, moving supplies to the warehouse in the Nansha dockyards. We managed to get the flyers and sheet metal of the others overnight. The boys did great, just like you taught us. Smiling, the police sergeant quickly circulated the relevant segment of surveillance tape to tape the senior officers at the Koshu Police Detachment. The relative carelessness of the inmates soon revealed the exact location of the warehouse in question, a cluster nestled in the heart of the docks, handling trade out of Guangdong's first city. The findings of the initial reconnaissance team were even more promising. Regular deliveries of ink, paper, metal, and bamboo would flow in from inland, only flow out back into the city on unmarked crates, and not onto the flotilla of waiting container ships in the harbor. The constable and the police boxes on the front lines could sweep into the city for the recipients of illicit traffic, but the real meat of the investigation was here. Logistics of the GFT's operations. Striking here would be a step towards a solution, instead of simply treating symptoms. They just needed a bit more evidence, a bit more observation to identify the right targets in time to catch them all in one swoop. But that didn't seem to matter to Legislative Council, where the police superintendents had been harangued at length to get the job done as quickly as possible. I'll save just in case, because I think we want to get this right. Surveillance units have identified one of the subjects of interest of Operation KS-197, are making a confirmed contact with known senior cadre of Guangdong Federation trainmen, referred to photographic evidence attached. Surveillance reports indicate that subject of interest A exercised considerable proficiency of counterintelligence tradecraft when making rendezvous with senior cadre M. Dead drops are employed for most communications. The surveillance between A and K was only made clear. Separate surveillance teams monitoring M compared notes of KS 97 team and established a correlated pattern of activity. More presently, A and M were cited together more recently, forming the basis of photographic evidence enclosed. While they now have proof of clear linkage between these distant cells and the leadership of the Guangdong Federation trainmen, dispensing of usual countermeasures by A and M is unusual and warrants immediate attention. Addendum Operation KS-197 reports sufficient materials received to transition to action phases needed. Addendum 2. Is there enough evidence to make anything stick to these guys? I need to convince Ledco to put these crooks away, and our case be bulletproof, and I have my doubts. Keep surveillance in place, just in case. When the police headquarters finally signaled they were satisfied with the amount of evidence provided by the surveillance team, folders and folders of photographs, charts, and financial statements tracking the movements of GFT cell and their conclusive links to their leadership, the officers in the field were raring for action. A brigade of riot police clambered in their armored trucks, screeching to a halt outside the apartment, questioned before storming premises, a torrent of heavy footfalls echoing in the hallways. Residents either scattered, stayed in their homes, or were roughly shoved to the floor by the charging officers. The cohort stacked in front of the target door, bellowing for the occupants to surrender. No response. To that, the unit captain, leading the column, turned back with a single nod, prompting a bulky sergeant to approach the door with a battering ram in hand. Slam! The impact rattled the wall, even as the hinges buckled from force. Slam! Scattered screams could be heard from the neighboring apartments as loose plaster chipped itself loose from the walls. Reinforced hinges finally gave way, the metal shearing in two as the door gave way with a near-splitting bang. The officers rushed inside, streaming in behind riot shields, screaming for orders with guns raised. They shouted emptiness, stepping on nothing but discarded papers and a thin layer of dust coating the wood floors. Captain's face blinked as he saw a mess of wires and ball bearings, coating with uniquely blackened residue. The telltale signs of bomb making. Smoking, but no gun. 1 to 2 clues needed to strike every GFT. We'll advise our options for more clues. Your strength is at... It's still low. We'll try Respite and reconciliation. Morita Akio has a plan to deal with consuming chaos on the streets. His plan is to negotiate with different dissenting factions within the riots and work out a deal with them to put an end to the anarchy on the streets. Matsushita has deemed that Morita's plan is the most feasible one that we have in store to bring an end to the violence peacefully without the police having to lift a finger. Understandably, however, the other executives and the members of the Legislative Council are not on the same page with Matsushita and Morita, and the plan is very unpopular among them. Facing no other option, Morita's plans will be carried out, and will have open negotiation with rioters, and hopefully reconcile to put an end to the riots. Matsushita will be very careful for how much he's willing to offer the riots, as one concession too many may cost him all the support from the Legislative Council and the other executives. Ibuka smiled over steam. Honestly, Masahara, there's really no need to worry. Matsushita looked up from his tea that sat untouched in front of him. You really think so? Of course, these troublemakers will burn themselves out soon enough. Don't look so unsure. It gives credence to certain rumors. What rumors? Rumors are going around in the assembly that you plan to deal with these radicals. I don't believe a word of it, of course, but maybe you can reach out to reassure certain members of your commitment to the current course. You're certain we'll get through this in one piece? Yes, just keep the ship steady, and the storm will pass. Matsushita nodded again, knowing the wisdom and political expediency of Babuka's wards, but his mind drifted to Matsushita's electrics. Most recently, the quarter report. Extremely declines in profits, unlikely to change unless the situation is resolved. He breathed deep. Let's hope the storm passes soon. Psychological pressure is best exerted. Oh, we already read this one. Keep them isolated, cross-check his statements against the other prisoners. Following individual observations of believed associates with inmate 7579, two individuals have been identified as potential sources of actionable information. Inmate 7588, 25-year-old Zujin municipal worker, guard-carrying GFT member, suspected foot soldier, involved in multiple breaches of peace, believed to be a direct subordinate of inmate 7579. Inmate 7599, 48 years old, Zujin shopkeeper, suspected of using their business as a front for illegal GFT activity. Denies membership or active involvement within the organization, frequently observed fraternized with inmate 7579 with a degree of familiarity. It's uncertain why both figures defer to inmate 79, but in thorough investigation of both figures is recommended. In doing so, further evidence may be raised against our primary target, and through them, the GFT's leadership. Swift actions of the utmost importance. Let's see. Look, all I did was give out some water, some spare clothes, and some flyers. It's office stuff anyone can get their hands on. How'd someone like you get involved with GFT in the first place? It's hard not to know about them if you keep seeing their posters everywhere upon you. My boss told me to take them off the streets. So how'd you go from not doing your job in Panyu to being a pack mule for the protesters? Look, I'm telling you, I had nothing to do with it. So tell us where you got the clothes and the flyers then. Tell us if you're free to go, but if you don't, well, you best get comfortable. Addendum subject provided information about a street market after sufficient incentives provided. Follow-up investigation with subject's superior may also provide the location of GFT propaganda activity. Maybe worth further surveilling to identify GFT surveillance. I think I'll follow the propaganda. Redirect the police to these guys. Uh-oh. Says they're on the wrong track. Well, that's ominous. I think it just outright tells us we're on the wrong track there. But okay. Follow the supplies then. Searching the Municipal Workers Department did turn up several boxes of supplies, according to him, intended for delivery to GFT members who have been forced underground. The items themselves are not a script, clothing, bottled water, packaged food. Nothing unique enough to be easily tracked to a specific supplier, but after analyzing the brands of all of them, they are all from companies that shipped from the Wakoshu dock, which are all known to have a thriving black market nearby. Based on this, Spothel lieutenant we've captured is in charge of purchasing and moving supplies from these black markets to his comrades who need them. We need to follow the lead further. Officer, I swear you've got the wrong man. I've never seen any protest men in my shop. Are you going to arrest everyone in my shop simply for being there? Everyone's got a bone to pick with the government. If you like it or not, Mr. Ho, you've kept your doors open during several protest incidents. That means we need to make sure you're on the level. Your clients are, too, to be safe. What? Hand over my customers? You're going to run me out of business. If you won't hand over the list willingly, the law can compel you to do so. No business above the law. First time I've heard that in a while. Get the customer lists. Well, who's actually going into the shop? I think that might be a bit more important. Matsushita shifted uncomfortably as he sat down with the representative of GFT. The meeting had not been opened on the best note, with Matsushita nearly shouting at them when he received their initial demands, which in his view amounted to completely undercutting the competitiveness of Guangdong's economy in the name of protecting Zujin-owned small businesses from Japanese and foreign competition. After this hostility proposal became clear to them, the GFT representative became more hostile in kind, refusing to budge and insisting that their demands were reasonable to stop the Zujin middle class from going completely underwater during the current global crisis. The tension lasted through the discussion, with each side testing the other's resolve. Ultimately, neither budged much, but neither walked out either. And Matsushita stood and to see out the GFT representative. Both sides agreed that, despite their obvious disagreements, that further talks could begin to hammer out a mutually agreeable compromise. Matsushita slumped back into his chair when the men had left and wiped his forehead. It was tense, but he'd held firm, and it seemed he was finally on the path to some sort of resolution. It's the start of nothing else. Finally, we can stay on top. Throughout this entire affair, everyone around Matsushita, from those he trusts to those he does not, have been exploiting the chaos within the government and the Legislative Council, though the riots have caused wrestle away power from him. Fortunately, however, this has been brought to Matsushita's attention, and he can take the necessary action to prevent such an event from taking place. Matsushita will keep a watchful eye on anyone who's still willing to do such an act of defiance, while simultaneously having his other eye on the streets to monitor the situation so that it doesn't get out of hand. We're at the end of a line, and it's at these crucial moments that the future of Guangdong takes shape. There must be no loose ends. Fuck. I was right the first time. I should have. Okay, customer list. Shopkeepers surrendered his purchase records, and on the surface, they don't show anything out of the ordinary. All the purchasers are sort of people you expect to freak in an antique shop, middle-class Zujin intermediaries for Japanese businessmen with no interest in antiques. However, after searching the store, comparing the numbers of items sold to the amount of actual stock, major discrepancies occurred. Shopkeepers moving ludicrous amounts of antiques, more than he could possibly afford to import, or that his warehouse could possibly hold. There's only one conclusion: the store is a front for money laundering. This sheds a new light on Lieutenant's role in the GFT, and it seems he may be charged with finances, moving funds through front businesses and disrupting them for the organization to be used in front of its activities. If we cut off their money, we might be able to bring the whole thing down. Use their strength and their radicalism. Anything to decrease radicalism as well? Do a little bit of that. Knowing the lieutenant's organizing supplies and logistics, his movements began to make sense. Jack has been able to isolate our location that he visits regularly. Before what we now know to be a supply warehouse to various GFT cells throughout the city. Location of the warehouse near the lieutenant's workplace would make an ideal staging area for supply, coordination, and distribution. Ready to be prepared now? Let's go ahead. The entry unit arranged themselves to the warehouse door, careful not to make a sound. The commander heard the units on the other entrances sound off over his headset, all in position. He nodded the man waiting with a battering ram. The voice of the operations commanding officer came over the radio. 3, 2, 1. The doors burst open. The officers were storming and shouting orders to surrender, but they were shouting at no one. The warehouse was empty. Outside, the commander gritted his teeth as he heard the report. Some detectives had given him bad information. He ordered the officer to check every inch of the building, but he didn't expect they'd find much. So lighting up a cigarette and wondering how to explain this to higher-ups, his rear came alive. Sir, I think we found something. What? Files, sir. They have names, dates, locations. The commander smiled. Seems like we hit the mother lode. Intelligence is important enough that we instantly begin an attempt to surgically move for GFT. Gentlemen, we've all come to appreciate your efforts of our small business community lately, and I'm sure you're all as excited as I am to finally pay them back for their contributions and their handiwork. Fortunately, we recently stumbled upon a golden opportunity. Next slide, please. The image behind the chief shifted to the floor plan of a medium-sized factory. This place has recently been identified as a frequent gathering spot for leadership of the Guangdong Federation tradesmen. Presumably discuss legitimate business, peaceful protests, yada yada yada. Unfortunately, they seem to continue forgetting to invite us. Fortunate oversight on their part, but one easily corrected. Next slide, please. We don't know what precise time in which leaders will be assembling, but we can no longer afford delay. We will strike at noon. No, not noon. Dawn. Catching them in the early morning will be our plan. Look around the basement hideout gone wrong, cannot help but wince. Many of his companions are sporting nasty-looking bruises or other signs of being battered. Police batons and truncheons had exacted a toll of blood, bruises, and pain from his people. What had not been broken, however, was the group's spirit. Even in the darkness of basement, Gom could still see the shining light of defiance still burning the protesters' eyes. We have 3 missing. I doubt we'll be seeing them for some time, while the police have them under lock and key, but the struggle goes on. It was hard to see the firm's nod as agreements by others intended. None of them wanted to admit defeat. Began passing out assignments for the next day of protest. It was no longer enough to simply have warm bodies in the street, as the police had escalated, so the protesters. Now, each member of the protest movement had a task to fill when the morning came. The largest, strongest members of the group would serve as frontline enforcers, maintaining the cohesion of the protesters and hindering the abuse of the police. Others would serve as supply runners, bringing water, medical supplies, food, and megaphones wherever they were needed. Finally, a few would serve as medics, biting the wounds of their companions and doing their best to ameliorate the police's brutality. The roles disrupted, the group bade one another farewell. Exited the basement and disappeared into the evening night. Guangdong's twilight continues. Will the pearls darken further? Convert to Islam. That's interesting. Least crazy Argentinian. The orders had come down. A morning sweep it would be. Over the coming days, we assigned patrolmen and right officers called discreetly away from their posts. Secluded away from the streets was a new unit dedicated to a unique mission. In between the endless mock drills and equipment checks, they wondered what the coming days would held in store. Some envisioned the spectacle of the mission itself, sweeping and arresting terrorists at crack of dawn, jolting them awake to the roar of uproaring engines and a chorus of approaching footfalls, to solace in the mission's purpose. They imagined a line of criminals parading in before waiting cameras, even as their street soldiers flailed in disarray, easy pickings for police, the end of a GFT as an organized force. The senior commands worried about the risks. A dawn raid would catch most leadership asleep, those who could identify anyway, but even if they could be secured without violence, they would be alone. Missed a few names, and there was no assurance they hadn't, then what happens then? And when the word got out, there would be the rage of the streets to manage. Nobody knew what would come next, and so they threw themselves back in preparations to reassure themselves the only way they could. Perhaps we'll hit an early morning meeting. We weaken these guys a little bit more. All these guys are still weakened. Nothing to affect radicalism that doesn't involve breaking the budget freeze. Although, we could grant some minor concessions. I think we'll do that. Radicalism is low. Speed, surprises, and violence of action. These tenets were well known and vigorously adhered to by anyone who wanted to seize a forfeited, well-defensed urban strongpoint, as a GFT had proven themselves more than capable of constructing in the preceding months. Do otherwise to invite unnecessary death or injury, or worse, mission failure. There was no need for the kind of restraint that the police had been asked to display on the streets. If you broken bones in an officer in hospital, or giving family were considered costs to be paid in the hopes of avoiding another PR disaster, to which some officers felt justified in repaying by inflicting injuries on the rioters when they thought nobody was looking. Nowhere in the hideout of GFT required no such restraint. Armored cars, watered horses, submachine guns. If they wanted to resist, they could resist to the end of their short lives. It was less clear to the police brass, of course, that if sentiment extended to the other occupants of the building the GFT occupied, killing it could easily light Guangdong aflame once more. Well, collateral damage is all the same. Go soft. Their radicalism is lower, so I think it'll be okay. Oh shit, we got the product cycles still. Color televisions. We'll push the product forward. We can't sell it to Germans, really. Sell it to the Argentinians. Goes to show that even times like this, products stop for no one. When the streets were already a volatile cauldron of rage and angst, there was value in taking a subtle approach. With the days remaining, plainclothes officers were dispatched late and wait until the appointed hour. Bucklers and batons were discreetly prepositioned so the unassuming squatters so common in Guangdong could transform themselves into agents on a moment's notice. A separate detachment of clerks pored over documents of buildings in general. Every staircase, every entryway, every fire escape, and every window was cased, so that there would be no confusion for the officers and no escape for their prey. With any luck, they would break in, apprehend the targets, and get out before the targets could organize defense, assuming, of course, they could be taken by surprise, and surprised they were not. The act conceded because the GFT's radicalism was below 50%. The haggard and fatigued captain paced around the cramped space he called his office, circling his desk, and the mess of papers and reports piled on it. The room felt sweltering despite the constant screeching of the fans that ventilated it. Each breath he took felt more and more labored. It was as if he was being drowned by the very bureaucracies he served, and in a way he was. Playing the raid on the GFT headquarters was going well, and, well, of course, he got a age-old question. Who should lead it? Japanese officers and local beats, or locals themselves? After all, it was the locals laying their blood being spilled. Why shouldn't they lead it? No, the Japanese should lead. The locals would sabotage the operation. The captain stopped pacing and slumped down on his chair, tirelessly sifting through the mountainous piles of paper that had been assembled on his desk in preparation for the raid until he had found the two files he was searching for, personal files of Lieutenant Nakamura and Sergeant Zhao. They'd volunteered to lead the raid amidst all the constant bickering on who should lead it, and now it was left for them to decide. Much more experienced Lieutenant Nakamura offered a much greater chance of successful raid, at the cost of more human life. Nakamura was known to be careless and brash, with blatant disregard for local life in the name of victory. Sure, he'd win, but he'd be bloody and botch, would not sit very well with local cops. Then there's Sergeant Zhao, typical police everyman, local, mid-ranking, mild-mannered. There'd be a greater chance for less casualties should Zhao be allowed to read, but the creeping suspicion that they might sabotage a raid due to being a local sympathizer stained his otherwise clean profile. Guess we just have to bite the bullet with Zhao. Let's hope he doesn't get any ideas. Faculsm's low, so I think we can do it. Yeah. The jaded captain stared at the folder that had been placed on his desk just minutes ago. It was the operational plan for the raid that Sergeant Zhao had prepared for him to review. Zhao really was leading the raid, he thought. The idea of a local raiding a raid like this was common sense after all. It was their home turf. Who else should lead it? Especially a man with a record like Zhao's. It was almost perfect. Except, of course, the thought of Zhao being a sympathizer and sabotaging the raid was just as common sense as the local leading it. Swallowing the lump that had formed in his throat, the tired captain picked up the folder and began reading through the plan. As he read through it, he couldn't help but feel relieved. The plan was perfect, and had no obvious shortcomings of how it was to be executed. Furthermore, Zhao's localness and familiarity with Guangdong read out to be invaluable, so the operation would undoubtedly be much more coordinated with the local beats than if Nakamura led it. More down on the timing of the raid, it was perfect. Even down on the timing of the raid, it was perfect. Being set at time, most Guangdong civilians would be off and away from GFT headquarters, thus minimizing civilian risk and casualties. The captain smiled as he finished reading the plan and set it down at his desk. It felt like a great burden was lifted off him, as if the years of work was about to pay off. Perhaps letting Zhao lead was the right decision after all. Maybe the best decision he'd ever made in his career. 10,000 years for Guangdong. So weaken these guys even more. Do some more of this. The police trucks lurch through the city, heading ever closer to the moment of decisiveness. The men check their weapons incessantly and fidgeted with various straps and elements of their tactical uniforms. But apart from the sound of traffic and small clicks, taps, and radio noises, all felt still. Eventually, a crackle came through a walkie-talkie and conversations were given. The element leader turned to his men from seat. Got a message of control about the area of operations, and now we will approach. We don't have the luxury of knowing exact targets or operating in an area away from the general public. We do not know who may or may not be a subject in the area, and will not know how those not currently involved will react with gunfire. What we do know, however, is that this is the place, and this is our one shot at this. We cannot back down, and we cannot fail, and we need to return home at the end of this. With that in mind, I've been ordered by command to. I'm saving a lot. I've been ordered by command to use deadly force where necessary. The orders were standard, self-defense authorized. Even though the police were sure that this was the primary assembly point for the older, less combat-inclined GFT's leadership, they didn't expect there to be no violence. That bridge had been crossed long ago, ever since that first night where the Tachi factory had been stormed. The officer prepared with quiet efficiency, checking for stab vests and service of firearms for any unnoticed defects or shoddy maintenance. They would need them if matters went pear-shaped, and they had every reason to expect it would for some, even if they convinced a few to give up the fight. Police were using their standard playbook, and even these were fall from normal times. There's a certain solace to be had from the steady guiding hand of a ship. No frills, no drama. I should probably check this out real quick. Truck back ground to a halt. The men stepped out. The factory beckoned. Weapons clicked. Uniforms were adjusted. Sweat dripped from foreheads. Time seemed to stand still. An illusion shattered by itself. A listless breeze passed through the air. An order was given. Weapons raised. The men went in. The world responded. Lieutenant Iwano wiped the sweat off his brow and reached down his walkie-talkie. There was a bloody handprint across his chest, but Iwano was unsure whose blood it was, or when it had appeared there. Still better than a bullet in the chest, like when Ono in the corner had earned himself, as well as a significantly higher number of rioters. The air was filled on both sides with heaves, sighs, groans, and curses. Team 1 lead to containment. Meat wagons arriving on scene. Can you get them safely through the cordon at this time? Over. Containment to Team 1 lead. It shouldn't be a problem. Crowd is looking surly, but we have the arms to hold them off if need be. What a day, huh? Over. You can say that again. It's over. Finally over. Soon I reckon we'll be having the first night of decent sleep. And a glow of saliva flung itself at the bridge of Iwano's nose. Twisting round, he could see the face of one of the student leaders, twisted in hatred and despair, while the rest of the GFT's leadership tried to look as downward as possible. Sorry, containment. 1 second, please, said Iwano, strolling down towards the cuffed youth. As a boot crunched through teeth, Iwano felt the nightmare lift. Raid proceeds smoothly. The Guangdong Federation tradesman is no more. Well, I think from here we might as well just cut it for now. We will be back shortly. And, hopefully we'll be, oh, God. Oh, no. Well. Yeah, we don't need to talk about that. I'm just gonna go. Let's not focus on that.